They already said the word, like it. It's moving on to the later part of the script, and now a second swear word has come out, and maybe a third one is being lined up like a machine gun. You know, that
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, there are some movies and scripts where swear words are like bolt action rifle shots that are sporadically placed. And then there are movies where the cussing is like an MG42 and there are bullet holes all over the place.
Welcome back to NFBC Today. We have another episode for you, and it's confession time. It's true confession time. We have filmed this episode the same night as we filmed the other one. As you can see, I'm in the same clothes, and so is Aaron. So it's a different episode, so it'll be premiering at a different time. We were really happy with the last one. We're hoping we'll be happy with this one. But completely different topic. Right, Aaron?
Right.
So you got Aaron's introduction. We're not going to go through all that again. If you want to know who Aaron is, check out the last episode. But we are talking about a completely different topic today. We hope it'll help you. We want to talk about our entertainment choices. TVs, movies, sports, different things. We kind of just want to think through together, Aaron and I, what we should factor into the decisions we make regarding what we watch and what we partake in. There is that one verse before we start the discussion here, Aaron. There is that one verse in Philippians
4:8.
What is it?
4:8.
Yeah, Philippians 4:8, which says, "Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence, and if anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things." And so I've heard this verse used by others in regards to guiding our entertainment choices, and I think it's good there. We want to focus on things that are pure, lovely, things that are excellent, worthy of praise. It's not directly talking about TV and movie choices, but it's certainly something to keep in mind. But a lot of questions come to mind because do I have to watch something, I'm just going to say it, Aaron, before I get completely pure? Because when we're watching dramas, and often that's what we're watching when we're watching a TV or movie, we're usually watching something in regards to good versus evil in some form or fashion. And so evil needs to be portrayed, and so we have to allow for that. So there's a lot to think about here, and as I was telling you before, Aaron, I don't know if these waters have really been traveled. I think this is something that our generation has to take on, and as you and I both talked about before, I don't want to be hypocritical. I don't have this completely down, what I should do. I'm figuring this out. I wanted to talk to you about this. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we get into the subject matter, just regards to where you are in your understanding of entertainment choices, and you're still figuring it out too, right? You don't have down.
Compared to the material we talked about in our first episode, where I could, I could go to this verse to talk about this thing about pastoral ministry, or this, there isn't exactly a verse that we go to talk about this, because uh, in the first century, the idea of having, hours of free time and to watch something for sheer entertainment was completely oblivious to most people. Like they, you worked until it was time to come in for dinner, and then you went to bed. Um,
Yeah.
do you know what the first for the early church, like for that time period? You know what was common for entertainment?
No.
Like like as a Roman citizen, do you know what your options for entertainment was?
No, please. I'm very interested.
Gladiatorial games where people were executed,
I thought of that.
and and bathhouses. So, we're not choosing those for our entertainment.
Right, and one of the reason I wanted to talk to you about this, Aaron, um, is some people might not struggle with this as much as I do, because I'm kind of a nerd at heart. I mean, I am, you know, uh, all about movies. I used to be a total movie buff. Now, you can't watch more than half of them because of the content. But like,
Yeah,
I love movies. My idea of a good vacation uh, is literally watching movies for days on end. Now I think that's a
I think
complete
I
waste of
think we're
time.
kindred spirits that way, Sam.
What's that?
I think we're kindred spirits that way.
Exactly. I mean,
I grew up
I could spend a week watching Star Trek. I won't, but that's
only the odd numbered movies, though, not the. Some of them weren't that good.
right. So for those of us that are, I guess, kind of nerdy, this is an especially strong temptation. And for others, some guys are more into sports, so they could have a similar struggle with the sports. Some people like both. And, sports and entertainment together are big time wasters. And Aaron, it's not just the content, but it's also the time we waste. Also, by the
Yeah,
way, big video game lover. Big video game
yeah,
lover.
guilty.
Yeah, so we're not saying we can't have fun, but we really need to think through this. And I'm sometimes like obsessed with like, because my wife's a big movie watcher and TV lover too, and sometimes I'm like, and I probably said this to her, and someone said, "Hun, what did they do before TV?" And I try to think of creative things, because we should have recreational time. Not every moment of
Yeah.
our life should be serious. And we do like to watch a good movie, but what else is there to do? And sometimes I just think, what if I didn't have TV? What else would I be doing? It's kind of like,
Well,
now I'm
Sam.
very busy. I don't have a
Yeah.
lot of free time, but it's still something I think about. Go ahead.
Well,
Yep.
well, Sam. In the old days, they had this thing called going outside.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Um.
Yep.
So just if we could like, just for clarity's sake, would you agree that if whether we're talking about movies, whether we're talking about TV, whether we're talking about video games, or these various means and forms of entertainment, would you agree that this is an area of Christian liberty? That
Yeah.
that that
Yeah.
is to
Yes.
say that they're not strictly verboten or forbidden, but they're not, it's really, neither are they required. That it's really up to the conscience as to, it's up to the individual conscience, and it's a matter of liberty. Would am I
Yeah.
off with on that?
Yeah. No, no. The simple answer is yes.
Okay.
And because, you know, if my conscience is informed about something or has a conviction, I can't enforce that on people. But even though I say yes, Aaron, that yes can sometimes be so easily used to alleviate any concerns. Because I'll give you an
Right.
example. I've never watched it, but I don't think Christians should watch Game of Thrones. Now, I've never
Yep.
watched it, but from what I've heard, I think that I can, with some confidence, say, you really shouldn't be watching that. I mean, unless there's like a super edited version, maybe. But you know what I mean? Isn't there some stuff that's like, I mean, okay, this is really extreme, but obviously Christians under no circumstances should watch porn. That's not an area of liberty.
Right.
And certain forms of entertainment get close to that. You follow me?
Right. Yes.
Okay. But overall, Christian liberty, and when it's not that blatant, we've got to allow people to be at different places. So the first
Right.
question is this. This is for you, Aaron, understanding we're both working on this. What factors do you take into consideration before watching a TV show or movie? What are things you won't tolerate? So what are some non-negotiables in your watching?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, something I take into consideration is the same verse that you alluded to, Philippians 4:8. Um, you know, okay. So like I explained to you, before we started this, I don't feel blameless in this. I'm a work in progress on
Same here.
on this. So here's, instead of saying this is what I have done, this I'm saying this is what I should have done, and this is what I'm gonna be doing from here on out, starting tonight. Um, a question to ask would be is, will this be good for me? Like, is this is this thing is it purely entertainment? Is it is there something in it, some redemptive value, some edifying value? Is there something beautiful about it, something good about it? Is it gonna make me a better person in any way? You know,
That's a great question.
some people, some people some people I am not an art person, but some people, like, they see the beauty of God's creation in a beautiful sculpture or a beautiful piece of art or a painting or something like that. And I think a good story can do the same thing. I mean, I love redemption stories. um I love the redemption of a good anti-hero. And do you know what an anti-hero is, right?
Yeah, wouldn't Darth Vader fall under that category?
Yeah, yeah. An anti-hero is someone who, it's a trope, or it's a common tool in storytelling. And an anti-hero is usually starts off as a villain, but
Right.
then they're eventually won over, or they join the good side. I love the use of
Sure.
anti-heroes. I love redemption stories.
Yeah.
And so there are some, like, I don't want to try to confuse or equate art or something to scripture or I'm not saying TV and authors. I'm not trying to compare them to scripture, but there can be beneficial, edifying, good things to admire and appreciate in a good story. And so is that what you're is that the itch you're trying to scratch? Or are
I
you
wanted to
just
know I wanted to know what you thought, and I
no, no,
I'm
no,
going to
no,
be
no. I
listening.
mean, I'm stating that question to the person who's about to sit down and watch something. Are you watching this because it's going to give you something good, or are you just watching it for sheer amusement? Do you know what the word amusement actually like the etymology behind the word?
I might have at one point, but I forgot. Go ahead and share.
Okay, so to muse over something is to think or to dwell on something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and you took Greek. When you put an alpha
It's a
before a
negation.
word, yes. So
Wow.
the original meaning of being amused is you're entertained to the point of your brain shutting off.
You know what? That's so good, Aaron, and that alone is worth doing this episode because, you know, on the other side of this, on the other side of this is the lost art of thinking. When we're
Right.
constantly amusing ourselves, what are we doing? We're not thinking. And
Yeah.
the lost art of thinking. Now, there's some movies and TV shows that make you think
Right.
and that are thought worthy and thought provoking, but um,
Yeah.
and
So
maybe some amusement. A side question, Aaron,
yeah.
is amusement okay in moderation? I mean, sometimes it's okay to watch a Tom and Jerry cartoon, right? Maybe those are too
Right.
violent, but something like that, is a little bit of that okay in your opinion?
Well, so I would say the way that word meaning has changed, and so when we say amusement today, I'd say we mean entertained and not your brain's shut off. So I mean, I would say amusement's fine. Just like anything can become an idol. So
Yeah,
is amusement good? And yes, until the point that it becomes an idol.
yeah,
Um,
gotcha.
so I had in my notes the question, or the statement: your eyes, your ears, your mind, and even your emotions, all the things that are being activated, and I guess sometimes maybe not your mind, but all these things that are being stimulated with TV, with music, with movies, with video games. These are all things we've been stewarded with. um, would I, I think a question to ask was, would we feel that watching this thing, watching this show, watching this movie, listening to this music, I mean, music, I think needs to be included in this list of entertainment.
Absolutely.
Um, this book we're reading, some people are
Books,
bookworms.
books. Yeah,
Yeah. All of these faculties of ours that are being stimulated by whatever the medium is, these are all things we've been stewarded with. Would we be embarrassed, or would we be okay if Jesus came back while we were indulging in these things? I think that's a good question to ask. Would how would you feel if Jesus returned to take you to glory while you were watching Game of Thrones? Probably not real. If he caught you watching that, you probably wouldn't feel really good.
that's a that's a good question.
Yeah.
I
By the
want to share
way,
you. What's that?
I have never, like you, I have never watched Game of Thrones. I wanted to watch Game of Thrones because Sean Bean, who played a character in the first season, is one of my favorite actors. He played Boromir in Lord of the Rings,
Oh wow.
and I don't even remember the name of the guy he played, but I knew he was in Game of Thrones, so I wanted to watch it because anything this guy is in is gold. I mean, he played the villain in Goldeneye, and then I found out that they killed him off, and so I'm like, I don't want to watch this show now.
Speaking of that, Lord of the Rings, and I could be wrong on this. If my memory is serving me right, let me put it that way. With Return of the King, at least, I don't think the Lord's name in vain is said once. And so,
No, and there's also not a single sex scene either.
right. So,
So
and they're great. I mean, those movies. I mean, There's a lot of, and I'm not deciding for a person what they should watch or not watch, but Um, you know, there's obviously a lot of Christian symbolism in that movie, and you look at the lack of profanity as well. Those are the kinds of things you're going to be looking at, if you should watch or not. And so,
Yeah. I
I
mean,
was,
I wish Hollywood would take a cue from those movies and make more movies with,
right,
that's proof that you can have a great movie without cussing and sex.
right, exactly. And by no means am I saying everything in it is perfect, but, you know, uh,
It's near perfect.
it's certainly better, way better than Game of Thrones. Okay,
Right.
that we can say, and so and I appreciate that. That movie didn't use the Lord's name in vain when that's such a common thing in today's movies. And I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, the story. I mean, the story is so rich, so
Right.
enjoyable. Bonnie and I went to see a 4-hour version of it in 4D, which was the seats are moving and stuff. So everyone's got to use their own discernment, um, but yeah,
If I can say something before you move on,
sure.
um, not only I think is it helpful to ask, what will this do for me? Will this be good for me?
Hmm.
Is to ask, will this be good for those who are around me? There
Yeah.
are things that might be and I'm going to say might with, um, uh, they might be okay and appropriate for you to watch or for you and your wife to watch that might not be right for um, children to watch like my wife didn't want our daughter to watch. I didn't mean to bring up Lord of the Rings again. This is not a unofficial Lord of the Rings podcast, but maybe it should be. Anyway, um, she didn't want us watching Lord of the Rings with my daughter. Uh, we adopted, so my daughter came into our home at the age of 11, um, and she has. I don't want to go into detail, but the intense actions and the intense scenes.
Hmm.
The I'm not getting the right words, but it would have been intense for her,
Yeah.
is what I'm trying to say. And so we waited about a year or so uh, uh, for my daughter to get grounded and everything, and before so like that would be an example. Just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should
Right.
with Christian liberties, and we need to be mindful. What are other eyes and ears and minds also getting out of this thing that my eyes and ears and minds are getting something out of?
Right. And it- and like I said, I enjoyed the movie, but one of the things that I kind of felt a little disturbed by was some of the depictions of evil. And I know you got to portray evil, but especially the scene with the ghosts in Return of the King, it kind of bothered me. And be honest, I don't know if I would want my kids watching that, or would at least edit that
Yeah,
part out. But anyway, that kind of brings me. I just wanted to go through a little bit some of the things I think about, and so this kind of brings as a nice segue is keeping the Philippians verse in mind and watching things pure. Can we watch a movie that has evil or sin in it? And if the answer to that is no, then we can't watch anything.
yeah.
And I think that,
You could
being
watch the credits.
right, exactly. So I think we can make the
I,
case, and
I,
again, it's an area of what's that?
have you? You know how like there are these services that they'll offer to like cut out the swearing and the sex and everything.
VidAngel and Clear
Yeah,
Player.
I remember seeing it was a I don't know if it was Babylon B. It had to have been Babylon B. Um, they did one where like VidAngel, did an edited, Game of Thrones, with all the sex and the
Okay.
language out, and the whole show was like 11 minutes.
Well, yeah. So, and that says something about the show too.
Yeah. Now, I mean, that was satire, obviously, but so.
Which part was satire? Did I miss something?
Well, no, that the entire I don't know how many seasons it was. The
Oh,
satire was that after all the sex and language was taken out, an entire show is reduced to like 11 minutes.
oh, this is Babylon B.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry. That went right over my head. I'm sorry. It's
that's
getting
okay.
late here. It's almost midnight here.
Yeah,
But let me just pick up on that point I was making. But I also want to say, too, that this sensitivity heightened for me when I was married. Because when I was single, I was still careful about what I watched, and I was prayerful, but the only one it was impacting on me. Now I think of the impact on my wife and my daughter. We're going to pick choices for her. But anyway, I would say that it's okay to watch good versus evil stories if they're done well and there's a redeeming value, because that's the universe we live in. The true story is a story of good versus evil. God will crush the enemy. So we would imagine our literature to reflect that, and film is a form of literature. So I would say yes, evil can be depicted. Still want to be careful with how it's depicted and what we watch. Second, I would say, anything human, any human creation, we have to allow for certain imperfections. I think everything we want to watch prayerfully and
yeah,
sensitively. Um, and I think sometimes it's okay to just watch things that are fun too.
and
But we
and that's
obviously
that's
want to be.
why that's why I wanted to clarify that this, I felt this was a matter of Christian liberty, and that we need to be careful about applying, broad brush statements that are either black or white.
Right, right, yeah, yeah, and I'm trying to do that too. So, but obviously sometimes, things cross lines, and maybe different believers are going to have different convictions in regards to that. But I guess I would say I don't think that we just have to throw all entertainment and TV out. I think we just have to be careful with the gift.
Hmm.
Now, here's a question for you, a biblical question before we get to our second question. And I'm not trying to take this out of context, because I know the context isn't direct, but I'm just an honest thing I'm throwing out. This is one of the verses that comes to me, Daniel 1:17. It says, "As for these four youths, God gave them knowledge and intelligence in every branch of literature and wisdom." I'll stop there. Um, they, these four Hebrew youth, these four believers in the true God, read all kinds of literature, including Babylonian literature, which would have been pagan. Now, I know that they kind of had to, and I know this verse, and I don't want to take it out of context. I understand that, but what do you see when you look at this? Do you see a permission to read various kinds of literature, even worldly literature, non-Christian literature? Of course, they were learning, they were being educated, not necessarily entertained. I get that. Um, but
In that verse, no.
okay, okay,
So I know you know this because we were both taught it. We don't want to mistake or assume description to be prescription.
yeah,
That's the difference between a narrative and an epistle, or epistolary, um, where the narrative is saying this is what happened, and then an epistle is this is what you are to believe or what you're to do. Um, where I don't have the verse in front of me, but where I would go to get what I think you're thinking of is there's a I think it's Acts 17. Paul the apostle Paul is at the Areopagus, and he quotes a poet of that the Athenians would that they would have read, and he said, even one of your own poets says we are God's children or something like that.
okay,
So that tells you have the apostle Paul being I mean, I guess you could make the argument that he had heard it. Maybe he wasn't, maybe he didn't have a copy of Athenian poets in his library. But I think you could maybe make the argument that he was familiar and with the art of his contemporary of his culture, the culture. But looking at something
yeah.
describing what God gave these individuals, I don't look at that and say, well, I need to go do the same thing.
Right. No, and I agree. I agree with you. It's definitely descriptive, and I didn't want to misapply it. Um, there's again, and I haven't really done an extensive study on this, but I just don't think there's a lot to draw from in regards to Christians or believers engaging with literature, because what we're talking about, TVs and movies, and like you says, it applies to books. It's a form of literature, and like we said, it's an area of Christian liberty. But this verse talks about literature, so yeah, I just brought it up. But no, I appreciate your answer, and I agree. I agree that it's descriptive, not prescriptive. But I'll have to, brew over it a little more to see how it applies to this discussion. But I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get to the second question. Okay, so there's a certain line where things are crossed. There's a certain line where, and it's going to be up to the individual's conscience to a certain degree. But
Yeah.
are you open to watching edited versions of films that have objectionable content?
Did you want to cover the things we do and don't tolerate, or was that coming up next?
Okay. No, go ahead. Answer that. Answer that.
Yeah. So my wife and I are more or less united on these things, where one discretion or discrepancy or difference is on language. My wife has a near zero. I'm going to say a zero tolerance for cussing and language, and like that's nothing to be like. That's great. You know, I wish more people were like that. Um, I have a mild language tolerance, so like a where my wife would be absolutely okay with changing the channel. We don't really change channels anymore, do we? I mean, we just
No.
um, my wife would be okay with passing on the show or the movie that we're watching, as soon as a single swear word comes up, um, or putting something else in, where usually like one. I don't want to say it doesn't bother me, but it's like, well, it's already done. Like, I didn't know that word was coming, but it came out and we're moving on. Um,
Hmm.
but if like as I'm saying that, as I'm trying to reason with her, okay, they already said the word, like it's moving on to the later part of the script, and now a second swear word has come out, and maybe a third one is being lined up like a machine gun. You know, that
I know,
there
I know,
that
I
there,
know what you're talking about.
yeah, there are some movies and scripts where swear words are like bolt action rifle shots that are sporadically placed. And then there are movies where the cussing is like an MG42 and there are bullet holes all over the place.
Right.
Like, I mean, I think of, I'd say the current example of that is anything with Ryan Reynolds in it.
Hmm.
If Ryan Reynolds is in a movie, I just don't particularly care to watch it. That's just me. Um, so having said that, my wife has a zero language tolerance. I have a mild to moderate language tolerance. I was reminded Ephesians 4:29 says, "Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only that which is good for edification, according to the need of the moment." And what comes out of your mouth is very often what you put in it. What comes out of your heart is often reflective of the things that you put in it. So if we're to have no unwholesome words come out, maybe we should be more concerned about even sporadic ones being put in. I guess I'm trying to say I am open to joining my wife, considering joining her in having a zero language tolerance.
Okay.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, where we are united and have a zero tolerance is nudity and sexual content. Job. There's the well cited verse from Job 31. I've made a covenant with my eyes. 1 Corinthians 6:8 says to flee immorality. Colossians 3:5 says to consider the members of your earthly body as dead to immorality, impurity, passion, and evil desire, as well as greed and idolatry. Ephesians 5:3 says that immorality or any impurity or greed must not even be named among you. And I can't remember which translation it is, but one translation says there must not even be a hint of immorality. And I like that translation. Um, I think I think uh, I think it's a shame when a redeemed person allows a hint of immorality to be named among them.
Hmm.
So we have a zero. It does not need to be it does not need to be hardcore porn. If it's even partial nudity, like that's, especially if my kid, if my kid is present, like I don't want them seeing that. I don't want them even imagining that mom and dad are okay watching that.
Yeah. Right.
So zero tolerance with nudity and sex stuff. And I mean, you don't even have to necessarily be showing a body part, but certain motions and certain, you don't have to have nudity to have sexual content. Um,
Right.
the other area of non toleration would be blasphemous content.
Mm.
Um, One of the most popular shows over the last 20 or 20 years has been Family Guy. Have you heard of that show?
Of course.
Yeah, I loved that show when it was on Fox originally. So this was like 20 years ago. I loved that show, and uh, so I don't remember if it was in the second or the third season. Maybe it was in the first season, but they started throwing. They had a mock Jesus in there,
Yeah.
and there were some things he did that like I that didn't jive with me. That I thought it was blasphemous. I thought they're making fun. They're making fun of Christians and they're making fun of Christ, and that didn't sit well with me even then. So um, as soon as something has even hints at disrepute towards the Lord, um, you know, that's a major issue for me. Um, I have, and I just thought of this right now. I didn't really prepare to say this. I think my wife and I might have a different standard when it comes to violence. So like, whereas I would have been totally okay with my young daughter watching Lord of the Rings, and
Mm.
seeing the ring wraiths and seeing the orcs getting stabbed and stuff. Like I would have been, hey, honey, this is cool. Look at that. My wife is a little more sensitive when it comes to violence. So I would say, in addition to that issue on language, which I did say I'm considering changing it. Um, I would agree, especially with younger people, with families. Maybe movies and shows where people are being butchered down in droves, and
Hmm.
real. I mean, there are some shows and movies where, I mean, it is gratuitously uh, graphic and violently graphic. Um, there are some things I don't necessarily want my daughter to. There are some images, uh, even though they're not sexual, even though they're not immoral, even though they're not blasphemous. There's some images that if that's going to be a stumbling block for her, if that's going to frighten her, Jesus, the Lord Jesus made a big deal about putting stumbling blocks and causing young impressionable ones to stumble. So I don't want to do that for my daughter. And if it's something that's not good for her, maybe I should reevaluate whether it's good for me. I don't know. Maybe I'll change that too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a serious responsibility. Um,
Yeah.
and everything that you brought up there is worthy of consideration. And uh, I'm not gonna
Let 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 let,
I'm not gonna claim
let me.
I'm not gonna claim to have reached perfection as you haven't, but that doesn't
Yeah.
mean we shouldn't strive. And also, just because it seems there's a general laxity toward this, even amongst Christians, and you might easily be called legalistic or puritanical. Um, so be it. So be it.
Yeah.
We need to be more like
Let,
the
let,
Puritans. Go ahead. Yep.
something that I thought of. You mentioned video games earlier, and I don't know if this is something you'd want to entertain, or if you'd want to shelf it for later, or just never bring it up again. That's fine. But with video games, and I understand, I say this as a avid video gamer. Like I love video games, but I wonder if there isn't some psychological, to use a Farnellianism, a psychological experiment. Um, or is that what he said, or was it a psychological procedure?
I didn't say
Um,
that, but I'm following you. Go ahead. Yep.
no, Farnell. Remember Farnell, Dr.
Oh, a
Farnell?
psychological operation. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if there is a reconditioning and a desensitizing to things like violence and even the matter of life. If you are, and again, I'm just posing a question. I have not arrived at an answer on this. But if you're playing these games like Call of Duty, if you're playing first person shooters where your primary activity is putting bullets in other, and I know they're not real people, they're avatars. They are computer rendered representations of people. But if you are if you are continually putting virtual digital bullets in virtual digital people over time, I'm just asking a question. I'm not making
It's a good
a
one.
statement. Are we not on some level conditioning ourselves to think that maybe some violence is okay? That violence is okay, and that death is. I don't know. I mean, do you get where I'm kind of going with that?
Yeah,
Like
and if I could go back into my childhood, I wouldn't allow myself to play Mortal Kombat.
yeah,
Mario,
yeah.
I think is okay.
Yeah. There's something different about jumping on a anthropomorphized mushroom
Right.
who doesn't even have arms and hands. It's just a mushroom with eyes and shoes. There's something about jumping on a mushroom, that's different than firing a digital rifle into a digital person in 4K.
Yeah.
Um, I just can't help but wonder if there isn't something to all those concerns that we just wrote off as stupid, when we were younger. These concerns that maybe we are reconditioning ourselves in a not so good way. Um,
Yeah. And
so that would be. Go ahead.
no, it's good. And I think that I, you know, Paul says in some place, and obviously he wouldn't have these specific things in mind, but I'm kind of applying it, that there's nothing unclean in and of itself. And I can't say that I know for sure whether video games fits that category, and I'm not claiming to have done extensive study on this, but I think when it comes to movie, video games, we know nothing in God's creation is evil in and of itself. And these things that
Brussels sprouts.
man has been given the ingenuity to create. I don't think movies and games are evil in and of themselves, but because of the corruption of this world, evil and corruption is pervasive in these things, and we have to be extremely careful.
Yeah.
And I think that video games, I think they do desensitize people, but maybe it's a
Yeah.
full discussion. Well, look, it is late here, brother. Let's get to the last question. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, so we talked
I,
about
I,
what we.
I'm delighted that this is going on as long as it was. I didn't think we would have that much to talk about.
I know, no, me too. Um, are you open to watching edited versions of films that have objectionable content?
I would say so. This is a weird answer. Not really,
Okay.
because um, I guess partially because I would then feel like I'm missing something. Um, but I think a better reason not to do that would be is you would then be supporting you would then be supporting something uh, that has in its original form, in its true form, in its complete form, it had things that you would object to. So I mean, like, if you took all the smut out of 50 Shades of Grey, can I still read it? Well, why would you? um there are so many better things, there are so many things that don't have to be censored, and don't have to be edited in the first place. Like, why not just watch those things, read those things, listen to those things? At the end of the day, I answered that for me. I personally don't really care to watch things that are edited, but if they are edited and that's what you want to watch, I mean, I guess go ahead. But um, I wouldn't want my money going, to a movie maker who made a movie with bad stuff in it. I wouldn't want my money going to that and indirectly or perhaps directly supporting them anyway. Just put yourself and your money towards something that you can be proud of for watching
Right. Well,
without any reservations.
yeah, and that's kind of, another question, the money that goes to these things.
This is just a passing comment, but there are some older movies that I don't know how they got the rating they got because there was clearly, there was clearly something in that movie that deserved it to be R or worse. But let me pose this for you. Like say Game of Thrones, because you brought that up earlier.
Hmm.
So the original has lots of gratuitous sex and language. Well, actually, I don't know if it has language. I know it has sex, but so say you signed up for VidAngel um, to send you the edited version. So there are, at the very least, there is one group that is being subjected to this trash. And there's another group that could potentially be subjected to this trash because you want to watch a safe version. Do you know who the group is that is subjected to it so that you can watch it?
Who?
The group who's editing it.
Hmm.
So in order for you to watch the okay version, you are, granted they're doing it before you purchase it, but in effect, you're putting your seal of approval on them watching it with the bad stuff, and so that you can watch it without the bad stuff. Now, so that's a definite. Here's a potential. So you have the edited and sanitized version of this show in your library now, and you watch it, and maybe you watch it as a family, or maybe you don't, but your kids see that title saved in your computer or on your watch list or whatever, and maybe down the road, they really liked watching that with you, so now they're on their own, or they have their own computer, so they access, maybe they don't know you had the VidAngel version, so they go and want to access it, and they start watching it thinking they're watching the same version you showed them, but it's the unedited. So do you see how
Right.
you have potential, maybe they'll do that, maybe they won't. But
Yeah.
do you see now how you have potentially put a stumbling block, into your family, into your home? Like, what you could have just avoided that altogether by just not have watched it at all.
No, you're bringing up some great things and some things that I didn't even think about. Um,
It's kind of like, and I don't want to be legalistic with this, but it's kind of like someone who says, it's like a man or a woman who says, I'm responsible with my alcohol. Um, I only drink a little bit, but Junior sees mom and dad drinking alcohol, and they want to be cool like mom and dad, and so when they're not looking, they start getting into it, and even though mom and dad didn't mean to it, that introduced their kids to drinking. Like, do you really want, even though you didn't intend it, do you really want to be the cause or the means by which sin came into your children's lives?
Right. No, those are all good points. Well, let me throw this one back at you. And there's so much to take into consideration here of whether to you're giving money to a company, you're exposing other people to it, like stuff you said that I haven't even thought about, and I continue to think about this and take it very seriously. But let's say I don't think it's still in production anymore, but let's say you had a clear play DVD player, and if I understand this right, you could put your DVD in it, and it will skip profane content for you. So let's say I'm not even going to give a specific movie because I don't want to get that specific for
Yeah.
people. But just let's say you had a movie that overall was pretty clean. There's one bad scene. You own it, and so it's not a matter of you giving more money to the company or whatever. And you can
Yeah.
put it in your clear player, and it'll skip that bad scene. I'm not
So,
asking you to answer whether okay that's or not, because it is, as you said, a conscience thing. But I will ask you this: is that different from giving money to a company in which people have to do the editing and see it, and said producer of
yeah.
vile content is still making money off it? Is that at least different? I'm not asking whether you would do it or not, but is it a different consideration?
Um, yes, I think so, but well, you said you weren't going to ask me if I would do it, so
No, I don't
uh,
want to put that much pressure on you.
yeah,
We're just thinking through stuff. And
yeah.
it's
I mean,
it's a
yeah,
hypothetical movie, so you would probably have to know what movie I'm
yeah,
talking about where your conviction would be on that. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could think of a dozen movies where, like, there's one scene, like they could have just left that one scene out. Yeah, if there was like, I mean, and this might be a very real possibility with AI. The kind of things that you can get a computer to do nowadays is absolutely amazing. So it's entirely possible to, in the future, to have a computer root out all the stuff that you don't want to watch. Um,
Well, that's another
so
conversation.
yeah, that can I answer the question you said you weren't going to ask anyway?
Yeah, go ahead. It's up to you.
So what if the computer program, what if the editing process doesn't work? What if it's supposed to edit out that scene or that language or that image? It's supposed to do it, but it doesn't do it.
Well, that's another question, and again, that's part of the equation. You're hoping
Yeah,
you're hoping it works, but that's always a possibility.
yeah. I there's there's um there's so much good stuff that's, and we've had in the last, I would say, especially in the last year or two, ever since, kind of in this woke, anti woke resurgence, we've seen a lot of good quality stuff come out. Not all of it's Christian. Uh, I think of like Tuttle Twins, and stuff like that. Uh, there is so much quality material. We have so much at our disposal. There are so many good shows and good movies over the last 40 or 50 years. One thing my family does, we like old black and white movies.
Oh, we
Like
do
we
too.
like we like Jimmy Stewart movies. We like
Hmm.
John Wayne movies, and
Oh yeah.
you know, there's so much good stuff there's so much better stuff to choose from that we really shouldn't have to, these things that our consciences are really bothering us about, like, is it okay if we just pass that? There's so much better stuff. Why not just watch that?
Yeah, right. We love the oldies ourselves. Well, this has been a good conversation. I hope it gets people thinking. Um, I would say the scripture verse comes to mind: whatever you do, whether you eat or drink, do all to the glory of God. That applies to this. And movie watching, TV watching, can I do this for the glory of God? And that might mean some thinking. That might mean some looking inside. Um, and I think we want to also just bring our choices before the Lord and pray to Him and just be honest with Him about our thoughts and our struggles and ask Him to be with us in this. Because I really don't think the answer is to completely cut out entertainment, but I think we have to be much more careful about this than we have been in the church, Aaron. And I think we should not be afraid of being called legalistic. Some might watch this and say, hey, these guys are legalistic. No, we're not. We're working through this. And as Aaron and I have said, we're pastors and we're still thinking through this. So I just think that we need to honor the Lord. He's the Lord of every area of our life. And I just hope this will get people thinking more and maybe just think about how you can honor the Lord better in this area, and do take it seriously, because He redeemed us, He loved us, redemption was costly, and we really should consider Him in every choice we make, and we need to ask for forgiveness for our bad choices.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amen.
Well, all right. Well, thanks for joining us again. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will close this episode, and we hope to see you at the next one. All right,
All right.
everyone.
I'll
Thank
see you. I'll see you later on Call of Duty, right?
Yeah, right. You'll see me later on Call of Duty. Sure. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Have a great night.